Perfect. Hello, everybody. Welcome. As you're coming in, please let us know in the chat where you're coming from, who you are. If you know our friend Amy here, give her a shout out. Let her know you're here and you're watching, right? I want to welcome you all to our webinar. I'm going to start. Let me share my screen. Here we go. So excited for today, I have to tell you, and I think all of you are really going to enjoy Amy's presentation. So for those of you who don't know, welcome, welcome, welcome. I am Annette Mendez. I am the Training and Curriculum Manager here at Good Grief. And today we have a wonderful webinar for you. We have Grief in the Garden, where we're going to be talking about returning to nature for solace and strength. And I'm so incredibly excited. I can't stop saying how excited I am. But for those of you who don't know or are new to Good Grief, we're a nonprofit organization that's been around in New Jersey since about 2004. And our mission is simple: to build resilience in children, strengthen families, and really empower communities to grow from loss and adversity. And for most of our organization's history, we have been providing free, and I always like to pause there because rarely are things free anymore, right? We are providing free and unlimited peer support programs to grieving children and their families starting at age 3 and going all the way through young adulthood. We do this in 2 of our centers. I'll show you a picture in a moment. We have one in Morristown and one in Princeton. Our work has absolutely grown. So we have gone from just having nights of support to having education, advocacy, training, curriculum, and resources to schools, to hospitals, the healthcare industry, and really just any space where we can empower professionals and parents and the broader community to support the needs of children and families who are facing loss. So here we have our beautiful centers. We have one in Morristown and one in Princeton. In a little bit, I'll give you some emails where you can contact us and let us know if you'd like a tour. We always love to show folks who we are, what we do. But in the interim, I'll share a few pictures with you. All of our nights of support start with a pizza dinner and a pre-group where our facilitators get to kind of gather together and have their own moments to get ready for the participants that are coming. And our families and our participants get to have dinner, one less thing that they have to worry about. We open all of our groups with an opening circle, and then they move on to the groups they're going to be with in for the nights of support. So if you're interested at all in learning more about our programming, you can shoot us an email at info@good-grief.org. And if you want to know anything about education, you can shoot us an email at education@good-grief.org. And with that, I'm going to introduce Amy Brummer, who is a Good Grief facilitator, among other wonderful things. And she brings to us really a nature-centered lens to grief and healing. Today in this webinar, she's going to explore how gardens and aromatherapy support our grieving processes. She's also going to highlight how plants communicate through scent and symbolism to offer us solace, emotional insight, and really opportunities for reflection, connection, and healing. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I am going to hand it over to Amy.
Okay, I will start sharing my screen. Thank you very much, Annette. And thank you to everybody who's here today joining us for this webinar. I'm very excited about this, a little nervous about this, but my name is Amy, and I am an aromatherapist and a Good Grief facilitator. And the topic that we're going to talk about today, grief in the garden, has a lot of roots in history, going back as far as the Paleolithic era, when archaeologists have uncovered Neanderthal graves with flower pollen in them. We see examples of the ancient Egyptians using the lotus to represent rebirth. The Greeks and the Romans would leave wreaths of myrtle and roses on the graves to represent the circle of life. You'd see these images also carved into burial steles and sarcophagi. You would find temples and burial sites globally in Asia and the Americas with examples of plant devotion. You have Victorian symbolism, which talks about the language of flowers and how they are all different and represent different emotions and have secretly encoded messages. You have the Day of the Dead with lavish altars that incorporate a lot of plant life and flowers. And to some degree, on a practical level, this became a tradition because the flowers and herbs provide odor masking, but they're also a way to honor the dead and protect the living. For instance, in ancient Rome, they had a whole holiday devoted to it called Rosalia. And as the perfumer Nuri McBride writes about in her blog called Death Scent, um, Rosalia was a way to express the love and desire, but the pain of separation and grief of loss as well. The Romans built a memorial holiday around this flower, Rosalia, and at its core was the annual Memorial Day for one's dead relatives, celebrated primarily with roses, making garlands and wreaths to decorate the graves of their ancestors. And the extended family would gather to clean tombs and arrange elaborate floral displays. The family would pour libations and conduct prayers at the gravesite and tell stories to memorialize those that they lost. And then they would eat a rose-themed meal. How delicious. So, with that in mind, before we get started on the sort of meatier part of the program, I'd like to invite everyone just to take a breath, get settled into their seat. And when you breathe back in, see if you notice any of the odors or aromas that might be around in your environment at the moment. There could be food or perfumes, or maybe someone's been cleaning, and it also might be very neutral. And that's probably where most of you are because we adapt to the scents in our environment over time and provides sort of a neutral playing field for when new smells come in. And then all of a sudden you'll notice, oh, somebody's making toast, or oh, I used a new soap and that smells a little different, or oh, it's 12:15 and my colleague is microwaving their soup like they do every day at 12:15. And all of a sudden you're getting this information because what's going on is your olfactory receptors in your nasal passages are interacting with these new odorant molecules, and they are stimulating places in your brain that are part of the limbic system, which is responsible for memory and emotion. And it's beginning to signal messages to your body about hormones and chemicals that you're releasing and sending messages to your central nervous system that are indicating things like hunger or desire or concern or danger or anxiety. And then we release those hormones accordingly, and these inform how we react. Maybe that toast smells delicious and you realize, oh, I haven't eaten today, and it's reminding you to nourish yourself. Or, oh, that toast might be burning. Is there someone in the kitchen watching it? Or that soap that I used, it smells medicinal, but in a way it's reassuring because I know it's cold and flu season and it's protecting me from germs. Or, oh, it's 12:15 and I smell my colleague's soup. And then you realize, oh, I have all this tension in my body. What's going on with that? And you think about it a little further. And even though you know this colleague is a wonderful person and you really respect what they do, you feel a sense of tension and nervousness around them, and you don't know how to communicate. And then you think, well, could it be the soup? And all of these are part of the way that odors and aromas begin to affect us psychologically, not even just in our mind, but physically in our bodies. And that sort of forms the basis for what I'm going to talk about first, which is a little bit about aromatherapy. And what is aromatherapy? Aromatherapy is the use of essential oils, which are distilled plant essences, to improve the physical, spiritual, and emotional health of those who are using them. So there are different ways that we can use aromatherapy. It can be inhaled, it can be topically applied, and in certain clinical situations, it is taken internally. And essential oils are derived from plants, and they're distilled plant essences, and they are created through several different processes, one being steam distillation, one being CO2 extraction, and another being cold pressed in the expeller, like an orange peel or citrus fruits. And these create essences that are made up of volatile organic compounds, which release a unique chemical profile when they're exposed to air. And on some degree, they become a spirit of the plant that was distilled. It's not the whole story. We have not used the whole plant to distill this essence. We've used a part of the plant. And some of the molecules are too heavy to make it into the final concentration, so they're left behind, and you get a shadow of the plant, but it still has a unique chemical profile that is the reason why it smells like it does. And it informs their character to some degree. And in this practice for addressing grief, I use inhaled aromatherapy. It's generally regarded as safe for most of the population. And it's particularly well suited to addressing grief because it focuses on emotional imbalance and its immediate impact on the lungs, which we'll talk a little bit more about, and its ability to influence the limbic system, which I mentioned before is that place that processes our memory and our emotion. And some things to know about aromatherapy is science. It incorporates chemistry and physics, biology, neurobiology, psychology. And essential oils have predictable outcomes. There are ways to measure the chemical profiles through gas chromatography. So you can determine and regulate the potency. It is used widely in commerce, and there's even for pharmaceuticals, over the counter, cosmetics, perfumes, flavors, fragrances, personal and home care. And there's even a branch of psychology that is dedicated to aromatics, aromapsychology, and that uses scientific inquiry to focus on how aromas affect human emotion, behavior, and well-being. It studies the direct relationship between smell and the brain, and studies have shown it to reduce stress levels in a doctor's waiting room, improve outcomes for students taking exams, teens experiencing depression, and improving cognitive outcomes in memory care facilities. But aromatherapy is also pseudoscience. There are parts of it that are known but unproven, which doesn't mean they're any less inherently valuable. And these are aspects that are emotional and spiritual, they're ancestral, they're generational, and they're traditional. So, taking that into account, one of the ways that we look at the different qualities of essential oils is by looking at the different parts of the plant that they're derived from. So, one of the ways of generational wisdom that's passed down with plants is something called the doctrine of signatures. And in essence, what it speaks to is that the way a plant looks will give you an indication of how you could use it. So, for instance, the leaves and branches with all of their different patterns are reflective of the bronchia in the lungs. So we know that leaves have qualities that will cure lung and respiratory diseases. So, using that conceptually, we look at plant morphology, which is the different parts of the plant. And in aromatherapy, you are using different parts of the plant to derive your final product, your essential oil. So you have the roots that are grounding and the woods that are transporting. You have leaves that are stimulating. You have flowers that are tenderness. You have fruit that is uplifting. You have resins that are wound healing, and you have seeds that are regenerating. So let's just talk a little bit more about that and how we can apply it to the grieving model. We can look at the different parts of the plant and what they represent and think about how we can apply this to somebody who may be undergoing the grieving process. So, for instance, the roots, they anchor the life of the plant and absorb valuable nutrients and water and produce hormones, and they provide strength and grounding, stability and nourishment. They support us going inward and being reflective. And root energy is heavy. It is earthy and has a warming presence. It also reflects everything that's going on under the ground, the things that you can't see, but that are there to stabilize you and hold you in place. There are a lot of communications that are going on in the roots and underground with other plants and mycelium and a whole world of activity that is happening that we can't see. And this might be indicated for somebody who is feeling unstable or lacking a foundation, anxiety, feeling overwhelmed, having anguish or feelings of being disconnected from life. And those are things that we can go into knowing when we're working with the essential oils and trying to find essential oils that would be right to connect with people who are going through different processes in grief. Like grief itself, which has a lot of different ways that it manifests, the different parts of the plant speak to that variability. So wood provides strength and centeredness. It is the ability to hold up and withstand challenges. It conducts water and nutrients, and wood energy encourages movement in places that are stagnant or stuck. So we look to that for people who are experiencing insecurity or lack of self-esteem and needing to conduct energy upwards or downwards. Maybe they're lacking connection with self or lack of a sense of stability or inability to communicate from a centered place. And as we move up the tree, then we come to the leaves, and they're connected to breath and to breathing. The needles function as leaves needles function as the conduit for photosynthesis, bringing in all that energy from the light and transforming it. And they're very connected to that power of transformation. And they inspire deep breathing and feelings of empowerment and vitality and allow for shifting in perspective or states of being that allow for transformation. Then we have the flowers, and the flowers are strongly associated with the emotional realm, beauty, and feminine energy. And they represent the reproductive system and our ability to attract and survive, and the difficulties that we have in our ability to soothe the heart and the mind. They inspire generational growth, new life, potential, and movement forward. Flower energy encompasses love, compassion, forgiveness, emotional nourishment, attraction, creation, manifestation, and the gift of friendship. It would be indicated for somebody who's experiencing anger or burnout depression, despondency, lack of empathy or emptiness, grief, grumpiness, hopelessness, insecurity, and low self-esteem, sadness. Flowers really react to our and reflect our vulnerable states. They're fragile, but they also contain a lot of power in their ability to create new life. It's the beginning part of when new life is created. And because of these vulnerable states that we find ourselves in, it's very easy to also be wounded. And that's where the resins come in, because the resins are nature's wound healers. When you cut into a tree, the sap will form and begin to close over the wound. And emotionally, that's what resins do for us as well. They're the wound healers of the tree. They provide this balm that mends us from the inside out. And they're very good for people who need to spend time reflecting on their life, their personal self, their relation to others and the world. And they're very powerful when used in meditation or for spiritual purposes. Their energy is healing and particularly indicated for emotional wounding, such as trauma, heartbreak, grief, and separation. And this would be for people experiencing emotional wounds, feelings of frustration and irritability, a spiritual void, a psychic wounding, a lack of self-love, despondency, bitterness, tension, worry, anxiety. But as we move through the plant and we pull that energy up from the roots, through the woods, into the leaves, nourishing the flowers that become pollinated and create the fruits. The fruits are naturally uplifting and they have a cleansing effect. They are visually and aromatically uplifting. They contain a message of purification and cleansing and juiciness and the desire to move forward. They aid in clarifying situations, allowing for that movement. They are energetically beneficial for those who are feeling heavy or stuck or unable to release thoughts or feelings, even if that comes from a feeling of guilt about moving forward and being able to convey a new sense of oneself as they emerge from the grieving process. And this is indicated for being cynical, critical of others, feeling claustrophobic, or feeling guilty or hopeless. And it's also about tapping into creativity and possibility. Um, and then from these fruits, we know that inside of them, we're building these seeds. And the seeds, although they're small and dense and very intense, what they've done is they've taken all of this information from the roots through the woods, from the leaves to the flowers and the fruit and the resins. They've taken all of that information and they are the final step in this process. And as the fruit falls from the tree and back into the ground, these seeds, which have processed this information and helped us digest the experience, they help us manifest our dreams and goals, and they are returned to the earth, where they then become new roots. And they take this information and begin to create the process over again. They move us when we're feeling stuck. They're regenerative. They help restore energy and confidence and health. They facilitate creative expression and emotional growth. And they support transformation and the breaking of old patterns. It's the end of the cycle, ready to build anew. These are indicated for feelings of frustration. They support growth and manifestation. They improve communication between people or the inability to digest one's food or experiences. They signify new beginnings and embarking upon journeys, restorative work on the self, and conceiving new ideas. Um, so the seeds, being the last part of that process, show us how these different parts of the plant, which we then distill into essential oils, all have these unique characteristics that we can then use as part of a language that is universal because most cultures deal with plants and plants are essentially set up the same way. They have the same characteristics, whether they're in one part of the world or another. And then we can take all of that information and apply it to some of the different models that are being used to address grief. And that's where I call mind, body, and spirits. And some of the different ways that we approach grieving and helping grieving people is one way is modern Western psychology, which accepts that grief is a process and it's variable and it's nonlinear. And while we focus on the outcome, which is to honor the loss and integrate it into our sense of present life so that we can fully function and create a sense of peace around our loss. There's also a neurobiological aspect to grief, and that is the role that grief plays on the central nervous system. Um, in Death Society and Human Experience, which is a seminal work by Robert Kestenbaum. A lot of grief people will know this. He talks about the neuroendocrine changes that happen in relationship to grief, and that grief is in itself a stressor, and that this will lead to higher levels of cortisol and epinephrine and norepinephrine, which are signs that grieving people are undergoing a destabilization of their psychological systems that place their health and survival at risk. And he asks about how we can learn more about how an individual's biosystems operate within society's death system to help understand it more effectively. And when I look at that, I think to myself, gee, it would be great if there was a system that combined both our physical and our psychological symptoms into a single methodology. And there is. It's called traditional Chinese medicine. It's been around for more than 2,000 years. At its core tenet is aligning body and organ systems so that your organs and your emotions are paired, and it works to strengthen the weaknesses that come as a result of that and soften the tightnesses that come with that. So in traditional Chinese medicine, grief is associated with the lungs. So the lungs are a important part of the overall functioning of our system because that's where we first have our inspiration, where we bring in our breath, where we bring in our life force or our chi, and we want to eradicate the stagnation in our lungs that comes with grief, perhaps from holding your breath or crying or diminishing your overall nourishment. And traditional Chinese medicine takes that into account. So you can both look at how an essential oil using plant morphology addresses the shifting experience of grief and ties these frameworks together to provide a framework that identifies and correlates the physical and emotional states so that we can choose essential oils to address grief. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I use aromatherapy, specifically with certain oils to address different states of grief, and why aromatherapy is so effective using those three models. It encourages breathing and the opening of the lungs. It embraces the shifting emotional, spiritual dynamics that are a part of grieving. It's contemplative. It offers a way to encourage people to identify or acknowledge their emotions, their feelings, and advocate for their needs or gain perspective. And it's a holistic model that recognizes the interconnection of parts and the cycles of nature, life, death, and renewal. And it reminds us that our ancient link to nature and plants is nourishment and medicine. I'm going to give you some examples. And I chose these essential oils as examples because they all have strong respiratory health characteristics and they encourage moving of air through the lungs. They also have strong digestive components because the yin to the yang of the lungs is the large intestine. And so by both supporting the lungs and the large intestine, you're encouraging movement through the circulatory and lymphatic systems and ultimately through elimination. And the oils that I've chosen address both systems of the body. So the first oil I'm going to talk about is ginger, which is a very common plant. Many of people use it culinarily or have used it in pharmaceutical preparations. Specifically, I think most people associate it with nausea and indigestion. It's also used for traditionally for rheumatism, arthritis, muscle fatigue, gastrointestinal spasm. It smooths the muscle, it smooths the cramp. And some of the character that we associate with ginger is willpower, encouraging, unique, motivated, and stable. And while it originated in Southeast Asia, ginger has been used as a flavoring agent through history for more than 2,000 years, and that's just recorded, and it's gone on for much longer than that. And the Chinese are believed to have used it as a root tonic for over 5,000 years to treat many ailments and cultivate it throughout their whole country. And in traditional Chinese medicine today and modern China, ginger is used in about half of all herbal preparations as well. It is grown in China and India and Nigeria primarily today, and it has a $4 billion market share as of 2004 for global cuisines, functional foods, dietary supplements, and natural remedies. And the reason I include this information is for us to understand that not only do these plants have a long history in human use, they also have a very significant role in our commercial world today, and they are an important part of our global economy, just further tying us to the way that these plants manifest in our lives. From there, we're going to move on to one of the wood oils, and that is Atlas cedar. And I chose Atlas cedar because it is a true cedar. as opposed to other cedars, which are really junipers that we talk about sometimes. But it is a true cedar, one of the three original cedars that include the cedars of Lebanon, which were used in the construction of the royal tombs of early kings of Egypt. And there is the deodar cedar, which is in the Himalayas and factors prominently in Buddhist temples. And then this is the Atlas cedar, which is from the mountains of Algeria and Morocco, and is most probably what was referenced in the story of the myth of Osiris, who was sent out to sea in a cedar wood coffin, having been tricked by his brother Set, who was angry over his pursuit of the goddess Isis. So we're going back that far into mythology. Um, and I also bring in the Deodora cedar because one of the things that we recognize with Atlas cedar is that it is an endangered species. So I include it because it has this long and beautiful history, but also because we recognize in the diminishment of species that there's also grief in that loss. So we recognize that this is an endangered plant that is sacred and needs to be treated with the utmost respect, and that there are other trees that have similar chemical compositions, like the Himalayan cedar, the Deodara cedar from the Himalayas. And that might be a different option for people because they have a very similar chemical profile. And in the Himalayas, the Buddhist monks have used cedar wood to calm and still their minds in meditation, to enhance strength and certainty in their faith. The fragrance centers the mind, focuses them, and brings clarity to their insight. With cedar, no past exists, no future, only the heartbeat of the present moment that is utterly entrancing magic, refreshing and sustaining. Stilling the conscious mind, it liberates the subconscious, dealing with the heartache and flushing it out of the body, which is a quote from the aromatherapist Elizabeth Ashley in a blog on the history and secret benefits of cedarwood oil. Cedarwood is originally from North Africa. It is currently produced largely in Morocco, where it's the whole cedar industry is estimated to be about 400 and some $1 million, and for use in cosmetics, perfumery, aromatherapy, and as an insect repellent. Um, It's used often in construction locally because of its insect repellent qualities. And today, when it's used for to create essential oils, it's used as a byproduct of the construction where they will collect shavings to respect its endangered status and make it more sustainable. But its character is centered and regal, endurance, commitment, and respectful. Again, it is a powerful respiratory oil that can be used to treat chest infection, congestion, anxiety, stress, tension, physical exhaustion, and it's detoxifying. And as we move up the plant, we move to the leaves and needles. And in this case, I'm choosing rosemary because rosemary has a very specific role in symbolism because it strongly carries the title of the herb of remembrance. This is because there are stories of scholars wearing wreaths of rosemary during their exams that would use to improve their memory. They would use them when they were studying. And a lot of this is probably due to the fact that Rosemary has a particularly strong chemical 1,8-cineol, which is a vasodilator. It really opens up the bronchial tubes and helps bring oxygen to the blood and to the brain. So it also finds its way into marriage rituals, birth rituals, and funeral rituals. So it is very much associated with the milestones of life and is used widely around the globe. It originated in the Mediterranean, and today the oil is largely collected from Tunisia and Morocco and Spain. It's about $260 million market share as of 2004 for its essential oil. It's a natural antioxidant and preservative. It's used for culinary use. And studies most recently are coming to find that it has a lot of benefit for cognitive and memory care and improvements that have come from exposing people to rosemary essential oil to improve that memory and cognition. It's also used for muscular aches and pains, muscle spasms, respiratory congestion, fluid retention, edema, and general debility, as well as memory enhancement. From there, we go on to the flowers, and there is no better flower to reflect the grieving process than rose. Rose is particularly special in aromatherapy because it has been used for millennia. It was originally cultivated in Persia, and one of the most important historic figures in aromatherapy is a person named Avicenna or Ibn Sena, who was a physician and physicist, and he is credited with discovering rose water, but he's also credited with improvements in the distillation process, which made it more commercially available to extract rose from its petals. And as I explained with the celebration of Rosalia in Greco-Roman culture, roses have been consistently used throughout funeral and memorial services to honor the dead. But they've also been used therapeutically as a respiratory treatment, as well as a digestive treatment. They are mind opening or cephalic, and they also support the female reproductive system, circulatory conditions, anxiety, depression, nervous tension. And their effects can even be hypnotic and help people move out of one state of consciousness to another. The character of the rose is unconditional love, treasured, forgiveness, embraced, inspired. And commercially, it is largely grown in Turkey and Bulgaria, a little bit in Iran, and it is a large industry, $2.2 billion in 24 for cosmetics, perfumery, aromatherapy, and home care. And if you ever want to go down a fun internet rabbit hole, watching videos about the production of rose essential oil. It's a distilled oil in Turkey and Bulgaria, noticing their claim to being having the best rose oil and being the largest producer of these oils is a very interesting game of pride that they play around that. So, um, then we have our resins. And for this, I chose frankincense because frankincense is entrenched in a lot of our stories and histories. It goes back to the nativity. And I think of frankincense as a plant material that we've been doing its bidding for thousands of years. It's used by the Egyptians, the Romans. It's mentioned multiple times in the Bible and used by Christians, Muslims, Hindus, Jews. The Ayurveda uses it to treat rheumatism and respiratory problems. And in traditional Chinese medicine, it's used to relieve joint pain and balance emotions. The ancient Greeks believed that its smoke could define the future. Christians saw these vapors as a visible representation of prayers rising to God. And the Egyptians believed it was the sweat of the gods and an essential to bring with you into the afterlife. There's a snippet about Howard Carter opening King Tut's tomb in 1922 and being able to smell the frankincense before they even opened any of the containers that it was in. Um, from an acupuncture and traditional Chinese standpoint, it also aids in the lung qi circulation and is an effective treatment for asthma, sinusitis, bronchitis, and wheezing. Traditionally used for these respiratory conditions, as well as scars and wounds and mental fatigue to address depression, nervousness, tension, stress, inability to communicate. And this form of frankincense, the Boswellia sacra, is one of many forms of frankincense. Most are indigenous to Africa, but there's also frankincense that is grown in India. Um, its character is healing, honoring, introspective, reflecting, and generous. It is a $500 million industry. It's used in pharmaceuticals, supplements, cosmetics, personal care, aromatherapy. Its byproduct, which is boswellic acid, is a very popular supplement today used for inflammation and being studied for its anti-tumoral effects in certain clinical trials. From here, we have bergamot. And the reason I chose bergamot of all the citruses is in part because it does, like all of the citruses, have good respiratory qualities in addressing respiratory issues, but it's also just a little bit different. It is a little bit ugly or ugly. It's a little bit unusual. It's green and it's nubby. It is not sweet. So this is not something that you'll see in a grocery store for eating out of hand. It is usually people encounter it in Earl Grey tea. It is the what gives that tea its unique flavoring. It's slightly citrus and light, but it's also a little more complex than that. And I like to think of it as something of a weirdo amongst the citruses. And the citruses are all hybridized in some fashion. They're a little bit of this, they're a little bit of that. But bergamot is just a completely unique player. It originated in Morocco and was brought to Turkey by Christopher Columbus. And then it made its way to Italy. And today, the vast majority of bergamot, so singular, comes from Calabria, Italy, where it's about $110 million industry for cosmetics and aromatherapy and flavorings and supplements and wellness. Its character is rectifying, integrity, supportive, protective, restorative. And its traditional uses are for indigestion, cystitis, wounds, depression, tension, insomnia, fear, emotional crisis, convalescence, and bronchitis. And that brings us to our final plant part, which is the seed. And this seed I chose is fennel. It's a strong digestive compound in fennel that aids in its ability to address things like colic, dyspepsia, gastrointestinal spasms, flatulence, nausea, constipation, abdominal spasms, but it also has the ability to address bronchitis and respiratory infections as well. It originates in the Mediterranean and now is grown in India, Egypt, China, Turkey, Brazil, all over the world. It's a $1.2 billion market share as of 2023, and it's used in global cuisine, food flavoring, aromatherapy, and natural remedies. Um, Its characteristics are exactness, promoting growth, and confident expression. So, in combining all of these different plant parts, we can take a look at how these different plant parts will reflect their uses when we're addressing grief. And this plant part morphology gives us a framework that's rooted in history, but accessible beyond religious or cultural interpretations. It incorporates tenets from traditional Chinese medicine, Western psychology, neurobiology, and nature. It encourages grievers to take a moment to reflect on where they feel imbalance and recognize the importance of their breathing and digestion. And by identifying their physical and emotional states, grievers can then take steps to restore that balance, decide what oils and plants can help them based on that, and develop a sense of intuition and self-sufficiency to cultivate resilience and know that there are tools at their disposal that can help them shift between their emotional states or create new emotional states that they want to move towards. And perhaps it's because essential oils are spirits in and of themselves, that they work so well to deliver the messages that are historic, ancestral, symbolic, complex, concentrated, impactful, invisible, intuitive, and mysterious all at once. And as such, they preserve some of the plant's vital life force, suspend it in a moment of energy, and make it available to revisit in times of need, like when we seek comfort and guidance in the memories and lessons of our ancestors and those that we have lost. And in the morphology of plants, we recognize the internal cycles of life from root to seed and the return to the earth to germinate and grow. And this combination creates a powerful resource to address the holistic experience of grief, which affects the parts of us that manifest both physically, emotionally, culturally, and spiritually in both linear and abstract time. I'll leave with a little quote from the aromatherapist Kurt Schnabelt, who says, Eastern and Western philosophical views and Western scientific thought all agree that our senses provide us literally and figuratively with our worldview or with what we consider to be real. As a consequence, essential oils modify the way our sensory organs process information. As the sensory organs change, so does the information delivered to the brain and ultimately the way we see the world. So I like to think that these aromas that are released when the sun warms the flowers, we pick the fresh herbs, we savor that ripe, juicy fruit, are the way of communicating with us with silent, powerful messages and experience them, which we experience subconsciously when we tune in and listen. It opens the door to a conversation where deep wisdom and self-knowledge and profound connection are possible. And in this place, we can see that the garden didn't simply emerge. It was planned, it was planted, tended, and harvested because someone listened. So as to a smell. And that smell whispered, "Hello, old friend. I just wanted you to know that you're here when you need me. Thank you for taking care of me so I can take care of you." And then I just have some resources on the last page about some of the places where I learned from aromatherapy and about plant morphology and aromatics, aromacycology, and global access to plant medicine. So that's it. I know I ran pretty close to time. So if there are any
Oh, thank
questions,
you
we'll try
so
to
much,
jump those in
Amy.
real
Thank
fast.
you. That was amazing. And for those that are in attendance today, if you would be so kind to send over the slides, I'm sure they would like to kind of have it on hand if you want to.
Yeah, I can
But
send you the
sometimes,
slides.
yeah, sometimes they ask for our slides. Before we get into the Q&A, I just want to pop into the chat our post-webinar survey. Please, please, please fill that out. These surveys kind of help us see what you guys are looking for, who we can get, and just your general feeling of these webinars. And Amy, for you, I have one quick question, right? For someone like me who doesn't really think of themselves as a garden person, right? But I am fascinated and I love everything that you brought up. Where do you usually invite someone like myself to begin? Like, what would be the easiest route for us to kind of get into this gardening work, to get into this aromatherapy work? What would be your suggestion?
Um, so I like to joke because I came to aromatherapy for the skincare, but I stayed for the neurobiology. So that was an easy way for me to come to begin to ask questions and understand what I was learning. There's a lot of information about aromatherapy out there. Some of it is well vetted um, and straightforward. And there's also a lot of information that is questionable. So I would say going to the NAHA website, which is the National Association for Holistic Aromatherapy, and I put that on my resource page. They have a lot of different schools, they have a lot of different webinars there, and that's a great place to just go and start to collect information and see what appeals to you, but you're going to get professionals there who are sharing information that is going to be safe and vetted by their research.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. We have in the chat, Gina was shouting you out, and she said that she wants to know the name of the group of herbalists who are trying to make all of this accessible.
Oh, that is my work that I do with Herbalists Without Borders, and they're also on the resource page. And they are an organization that are connecting people with plant medicine because globally, it's estimated that about 70% of the globe still uses some form of plant medicine as their primary source of medicine. And at Herbalists Without Borders, we both provide outreach in crisis situations, we provide education, and we have chapters all over the globe that are connecting people with plant medicine for free or at very minimal cost.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Thank
Just
you.
looking at the time, I want to give everyone the opportunity to hop off if they need to, but I just want to not only thank you, Amy, but kind of leave all of us with just one quick final thought. And I think that when you brought up this webinar, I was so incredibly interested in it. And now even more so now, now I'm going to go down this rabbit hole that you just gave me. But I feel like gardens really remind us that nothing grows on command, right? Not roots, not blooms, and not even healing, right? And I think that grief moves in the same way. So I invite everybody to kind of slow down enough today to kind of notice a scent, notice the season, notice some silence, right? And really give ourselves permission to not only grieve without fixing, but allow others to grieve and not try to fix them either, right? And to be changed quietly in this process. This was amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. For those who attended, you will get a certificate of attendance. In the next 2 weeks or so, you should be able to get a recording along with Amy's information and her slides. And once again, Amy, thank you so much, not only for this webinar, but for all that you do for Good Grief. Truly, truly appreciate you. And I hope to see all of us at our upcoming webinar. Thank you so much, Amy. We'll see you
Thank
guys.
you very much, Annette. Thank you, everyone who
Thank you.
attended. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.